And we're back. Today we're gonna work on getting this A-post all welded up, the inner structure, and then we'll cap it back off. Just cleaning the rust off of these 8-pillar posts here, using plain old white vinegar, soak it in that for a few days, and then neutralize it with water and baking soda, and then cleans it up to something that's less rusty. Just sprayed some red oxide on these to keep them from flash rusting again. Got a little repair to do on this one, not really a big deal. Probably just weld that up and call it a day. Sometimes when I got like pinholes and stuff and I don't really feel like putting in a small patch, I just use this silicone bronze wire or rod, I guess. Works pretty good for filling that stuff up without getting it too hot and whatever. This stuff is 3/32, which is all I can buy locally. So if anybody in Canada knows where I can get like 1/16 or thinner silicone bronze rod for the TIG, leave a comment and let me know. But anyways, that's what we did there. Cool thing about this is, unlike the old brazing stuff where you had to worry about the flux and whatever causing paint issues, there's no trouble with that using this silicone bronze stuff. So, and whatever, gets the job done. There you go. So here I am welding up all the inner structure on the roof. I'm just using a MIG welder, and what I'm doing is I'm using the crisscross applesauce technique. And that's where I only weld about an inch at a time and then move over to the other side and just work my way back and forth. I don't want to just weld everything on one post all at once, even though there's no sheet metal that can be warped. I find if you put too much heat into the post all at once, it'll actually cause it to move, and we really don't want that moving around on us. So obviously this is too long now to fit back on here. So I guess traditionally you just cut through the middle and weld it back together to here, but seeing as how there's a factory seam here and a factory seam here, I'm just gonna trim off a little off the top and the rest of it off the bottom, and then it'll be re-welded right at the factory weld. So that's the way we're gonna do it. The reason I'm cutting more off the bottom is because I don't know if you can see on camera, you can probably hear my heater right now though, it's not helpful. But this kind of tapers inwards, and the sheath is more the same thickness at the bottom. So I'm just going to cut some of the ugliness off of here at the top, but we'll try to maintain as much of this taper as we can up top. And then we'll just kind of fake something out on the bottom. All of this was just smooched over with lead, and that's the way we're going to redo it. So there's no point in getting too scientific with it at this stage. So because we had to angle these posts on the windshield in, I had to heat up the inside of the door there and then just tweak it in a bit to match the angle that has changed here, because otherwise the door tops were sticking out before. So I'm always getting asked every video why I'm using a drill with one of these for grinding my welds down, and just so everyone knows, there's no benefit to doing this. The reason I'm using this is because I'm cheap and poor, and I spent all of my money on useless project vehicles that I'm never going to get around to working on instead of buying tools. So this is just a $30 drill, and this is what I'm using. It's just to get by. It's not because it works good. I do kind of have like an air compressor on the wish list. Maybe this year we'll see, so that I can actually use an angle grinder like this. If anything, this is like a lesson, like don't spend your money on having 800 different project vehicles. Spend your money on tools. Tools will literally print money for you, whereas project vehicles just suck away all your money. So yeah, I also don't, you probably see me use like this grinder, like just an angle grinder, a 4.5 inch angle grinder for just roughing down the MIG welds and taking the initial top off them, but I don't use this for final finishing. I just find this is a lot more, well, these Roll-Lock discs, whether they're on one of these preferably or my cobbled together setup here, it's just a lot more controllable for the final grinding. You know, it's too easy to get carried away with the angle grinder and remove too much material. And I've tried all different kinds of flap discs and different grinding discs on this, and again, it's too aggressive for final finishing. And I find with these flap discs, I know a lot of people like them, but I've noticed they start to kind of undercut around the weld, and they start digging away metal instead of just the weld. So that's why I don't really use these very often, because I just find that they kind of float over the weld and start undercutting the surrounding material, which again, you don't want to do. So this is just what I'm using. Again, not something I recommend, but hope that answers your questions. Well, last night I got the A-post caps put back on. I got all the inner structure welded. It basically worked out exactly as planned, but you can see we're gonna have some sculpting to do. This is, we just left the factory seams here and all the factory cave and pave and just re-welded it right at the factory joints. So, you know, it's pretty harsh, but this whole post is just gonna get sculpted out with lead. So technically, I mean, the right way to do this, and actually faster way, we would have to remake these entire posts, basically, you know, the whole thing, to get rid of all this nonsense here. But I just kind of figured, you know, this thing held up with the lead in it for 70 years, and like, does it really need to last longer than 70 years? Probably not. So we're just going to shmoo back over it with lead, call that a day. Still got some finishing up to do here. This was all way too tight, and it's always super tight on these trucks here. So we're going to have to cut this back and fix that. And then there's going to be some serious sculpting to get this all kind of looking right again. But I guess that'll be kind of, well, it won't be fun, but it'll be something. It's kind of a fun contrast between those A-posts and the repairs we did in the previous video there. Kind of looks like it was worked on by like 2 different people or one insane person. I noticed in the comment section of my videos that there's always a lot of folks giving old Glad Chad their hard time for using too much filler. Well, General Motors and Carter's Hairstyling says hold my beer. Because there's going to be some fill on this old world craftsmanship, I can tell you that for free. Yeah, at the end of the day, lead is just glorified Bondo. It can be used and abused just the same as Bondo, and we are certainly going to be abusing it. Next up, I got to weld up this relief cut here, and all of this is going to be getting buried in lead as well. I don't have any access to hammer and dolly it out decently, so we're just going to sculpt away. Sculpt your way to happiness. It's the title of my new book, which will be available soon in the merch store. And on the inside here, as it turns out, there's actually another brace in behind this inner brace. So that means I get to dissect all of this, peel this layer off, and then weld that inner brace, and then close this all back up again. So that's a bit of a project in itself, so I think we're going to work on that next. It does look a lot more complete though, with the those caps put back on the A-posts. Starting to look a little bit more like a truck cab again. And if you like cover up the cave and pave, it looks even better, but that'll be something we'll have to address in the future there. We got our piece dissected from there, and you can see the inner structure there, which will need to be welded. And there's not really any way to weld that without taking this off first. And it looks kind of important, so we'll make sure we get that zip back together, and then we'll just toss this back on, re-weld it, and it'll all be welded up again. Because we're obviously already going to be leading up these factory joints here, and the lead is going to be coming, you know, basically, well, probably this whole post and then up to about here. There's no point in trying to metal finish out this relief cut here, so I'm just literally going to weld it, knock down the weld, and then we'll end up just coming across here with the lead and just filling all this in with lead. There is a bit of an awkward transition here, and I don't have any access to the backside. You saw all the inner structure in there, and to me it's not worth dissecting all that just to make this smooth when we're still going to be, you know, filling all of this. So a bit of old school hackery, but it's just the way it's got to be, I guess. Now I'm all for wasting time on fruitless endeavors, but today is not the day. Let's get this done. That's all welded back together now. Both sides. Didn't get too crazy with trying to finish it out or anything because it's covered by the garnish molding, the windlace, and the headliner. So I just wanted to be strong. Painted the inside of everything just with some generic rust paint or whatever. I don't get too concerned about stuff like that. It was all in bare metal for the last 70 years and didn't rust out. So I figure just the generic rust paint, well, it's cheap and it's better than what it had, arguably. So I guess if you really wanted to, you could sandblast the whole thing and dip it and coat it with all kinds of epoxy primers and all that stuff. At the end of the day, does any of this really need to last longer than 70 years? Probably not. So for anybody just tuning in, when I chopped this roof, I actually joined it right at the factory weld seam. Rather than, you know, I've seen most folks, they usually just go through the middle of the post here, but on these advanced design trucks, there's a factory seam up here, which you can still see. That's a factory weld there, and I just joined it right below. And by doing that, it just eliminates an extra weld in the post. And this has kind of like almost a sleeve that it fits inside of this lower post. So we just cut off the outer layer of the weld and cut out what we needed, and then dropped it back into the sleeve back into the thing here, and then re-welded it there. And so all of this is essentially factory, other than where we had to make our relief cuts, but we did re-weld all the relief cuts again. So it's again, like we said, just as structurally sound as it was originally, possibly a little bit more, because again, a lot of the original welds and stuff weren't even holding anything. So there you go. Yeah, we got these seams all welded up on the outside here. That's gonna need a healthy dose of product as well. I just MIG welded it. I didn't have any access to the backside to hammer and dolly it, so there's no point in getting fancy with a TIG welder. And I'm not going to get into dissecting all the inner structure of this roof just to make it 1% better, when this is still going to get completely sculpted with lead basically out to here. So yeah, this is pretty harsh here. Actually, I guess it's not as bad as I thought, but this is all supposed to have some crown to it, so it's definitely low. Oh yeah, you can see it there. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna just end up probably leading out to here. I think I already mentioned it, but it would probably be faster and obviously better to just remake these posts and join them in. It'd be a lot nicer than trying to redo the factory nonsense here. But I like doing lead. It's fun and it offends people. If this was a nice vehicle, then I'd definitely be cutting all this out and remaking the posts. But for what we're doing, you know, sculpting it out of lead, if we get another 60, 70 years out of it, like it really doesn't need to last longer than that. I'll be dead by then, most likely, or really, really old. And if I don't care now, I'm definitely not going to care when I'm really, really old. So that's my theory there. You can agree or disagree with that, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because it's my truck. So we're going to do whatever we want and whatever we feel like. And they built a couple million of these truck cabs, and there's probably still several thousand of them still on the road, still with lead in their ugly factory seams here. So I mean, again, I'm not going to make it any better than what the factory did. If what they did worked, then we'll just do what they did. And all of this is now structurally sound. Like I said, we welded up all the inner structure, and the whole idea with this was just to make it exactly as strong as it was from factory. You know, no compromises there, and that I think we achieved that. So I'm sure somebody's going to comment and tell me that I'm wrong and that these trucks were perfectly smooth and they never used any lead in them at all and whatever other nonsense they can think of to come up with. So here's a clip of me removing the factory lead from the seams here before we chopped the roof. And here's what it looked like underneath. See, this was all gas welded originally and then beat in with a pick hammer and let it over. And then up here, this seam here was actually just spot welded and lap welded in place. It wasn't fully welded. So you can see there was some rust issues from from that seam being open underneath the lead. So when we redid it, we actually fully welded the seam, so there should, in theory, be less chance of rust occurring underneath the seam. So it might even last longer than 70 years. I don't know, but either way, I don't really care. I'm not going to do any lead work on this until later because I still haven't decided if what I'm doing for the drip rail, whether I just shave the drip rail off and leave it smooth, or the other option is I weld on a piece of rod and do a molded in drip rail. I'm kind of going back and forth. I haven't fully committed to anything yet, so I can't lead this until I decide what I'm doing with the drip rail. And I'd also like to get the doors gapped in and fitted to the cab, but I can't do that until I'm done modifying the doors, and there's a whole pile of modifications left to do on the doors. So for now, we just got to look at an ugly seam. The hell are you doing? Oh no, the hood doesn't fit. I mean, it's okay at the front, kind of. Well, not really, but over here, I don't know. I don't know what happened. We must have really warped the cab when we welded these posts on. Like, look at this gap here. I don't know. Maybe we can just add some coat hanger on here and fill in the gap. I really don't know what happened. Like, this is definitely a setback. It's a setback. Yep. So leave a comment and let me know in the comment section. What went wrong here? Like, why doesn't the hood fit anymore? I don't understand it. Let me know. Calling all experts. This is your time to shine. Well, in case you haven't figured out, we were just goofing around there. Obviously, the hood is going to have to be sectioned next, or that's what we're working towards next. It's kind of funny, when I chopped the top on this, a bunch of people chimed in and told me that I had ruined a nice original classic truck, but what they didn't realize is that this cab is already got 4 inches missing from it before we even chopped the top. So now there's a whopping 7 inches of cab being lower, and that just goes to show you the people that call you out and say you ruined a classic, they don't even know what the hell they're looking at. If they can't tell there's a whopping 4 inches missing out of it before you chop the top, they don't know anything. So don't listen to them. They're a bunch of no, I can't say that. They're a bunch. We'll get kicked off the internet here if we say what we really think about the experts. So yeah, this cab's already been sectioned 3 inches, I believe, and then it's been channeled 1 inch. So that means we cut out the floor and we dropped the floor down an inch, and then we sectioned 3 inches out of the middle of this cab. And so we're gonna have to take 4 inches out of this hood to bring it back down and get it lined up here. So that's kind of the next test or task, I guess. But before we do that, we have to get this front end aligned a little better. This front fender, the other front fender is not bad, but this one, it doesn't look bad, but it's pushed back probably a good inch or more, and it's all smashed in here. So we got to kind of, yeah, you can see there it's all buckled out there. And even though I'm only actually going to be using probably like a small portion of this fender, the wheel wells are getting radiused or raised up, and the front headlight is getting changed out, and then the back is getting basically cut off and completely reworked. But I still have to get this fender straight and the front end kind of squared up to the rest of the truck before I start cutting down the hood. Now, those of you who've been following along with this project for a while, well, first of all, thank you for following along. I really appreciate that. And you probably know that we still have to weld up all of these seams on the top of this roof still. But last week, while I was welding up this seam, I had a thought with my brain, and we have all of this garbage, this frame in the way, and just trying to work around this, and the truck is high off the ground and I can't get a good camera angle so you guys can see what's going on. So instead of like struggling and working around this frame, which is literally scrap metal, like I know, again, the people who said I wrecked an original truck here, just I don't know if you can see. I guess you can't really see. Camera doesn't pick it up, but when you step on the running board, the frame isn't supposed to flex, and you can see all of this down here. The whole frame is like that. It's all paper thin. It's garbage. So we are not using this frame. It is, well, it's going to scrap. I'm going to take the axles out of it and whatever else I can save from it, and the rest of it is going right in the baler. I'm not saving this. I'm all for saving junk, but we're not putting this thing on a patch together frame made out of 800 different pieces welded in when we have a perfectly good frame in the backyard that we can use. This frame was just for, literally, I had to get the cab squared up to get the floor in, because this cab was so rotted out that I couldn't even lift it off originally until it had some structure in it. So now that we have enough structure in it, where am I going with this? I don't know. Now that we have enough structure in the cab and the roof is, all the roof structure is welded back on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this this cab off of here, plonk it on the floor, and then I'm going to weld that seam while the cab is on the floor, and that way it's easier for me to work on it and it's easier for you to see what's going on. I can do a better job of filming everything as it happens. So that's what's happening there. We're just going to ditch this frame, put the cab on the floor, weld the roof up, and then we can, at that point, we can plonk the cab on its replacement frame and continue moving forward with the project. Before I do that though, I want to get the front sheet metal squared up a little bit better and the hood sectioned and opening and closing, because even though this frame is rotted Swiss cheese, it actually is somehow still square. So you might as well get this all squared up while it's still, all together. And then when we go to put everything on the other frame, we at least have a good starting point and we don't have to completely start over with fitting everything again. So that's what's going on here. We're going to be working on getting the front end squared up next, getting the hood sectioned. Then we're pulling the cab off and finishing the roof. Another exciting thing that happened is I ended up picking up a donor car to use the rear section for our custom bed that we're building for this truck. So again, another reason to start moving towards getting this truck on its actual frame. So that's going to be happening in the not too distant future, I hope. So yeah, we're going to be super busy for the next little bit here, because we're also just ordered up all the bits and pieces, or hopefully most of the pieces that I need to get this thing on the road again. I know nobody cares about this car, but and you know, I've been enjoying using it as a shelf and an office for editing these videos, but I feel like it would be more useful as a car because right now it's just taking up space. I can't even drive it somewhere to put it in storage and get it out of the way. It's in the way. So that's also coming up, but we're not stopping work on this. We're going to be working on both cars, or both trucks, cars, whatever they are, at the same time. And there's also a whole bunch of other stuff coming up this year that we'll be working on. So we're going to be, we got a lot to do, but I really would like sometime this year for this truck to start resembling its final form, I guess. So I'd like to get the bed kind of starting to roughed in and whatever, and then we'll deal with all the little finicky finishing stuff later on. But I think it'd be cool to start seeing this start to come together and start to actually look like something. All right, we're gonna wrap it up here. Unless any of you want to listen to me monologue about my cave and pave job for another 20-30 minutes or more, we can keep going all day if you want. Better sign off. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one. A lot of people don't know this, but bodywork is actually a lot like archaeology. Once you're done excavating your trench, the responsible archaeologist always goes back over and fills it back in so that it can be preserved and discovered and enjoyed by future generations.